Welcome to Happy Mind TV and welcome to this How To Tuesday. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking to you all about failure and how to deal with failure. So often we have this perception of failure and what failure means to us in our lives that it takes us away from all of the fundamental lessons that we should be thinking about when failure presents itself. So in this How To Tuesday, we are talking all about how to deal with failure. And I'm going to give you 5 top tips to help you when failure does come into your life. Number 1, if you have failed, it means that you have tried. So often we forget that failing means that we are trying. Failing doesn't mean that we are a failure. It doesn't mean that everything we've done has gone wrong. It means that we have tried. So when you do experience failure, which we all do, that is totally okay because it means that you've tried. You have tried something new or something else, or you've tried to change something. Trying is the best way for you to learn and grow and progress. So the next time, my first really important tip for you, the next time you experience failure, remind yourself that means that you have tried. Reward yourself for trying. Don't punish yourself for failing. Reward yourself for trying. Don't punish yourself for failing. Tip number 2, when you fail, you learn a lesson. So often we forget that this failure, it's not actually about this big dark cloud that follows us around. It's about what we learn from that failure. And actually, the majority of the time we forget the lessons that we're being taught, and we do forget to take the time to reflect and readjust quick enough to make those changes. So the next time you fail, think about the lesson that you could learn. What can you do differently next time? What did work about it? What didn't? Where was the weak link? What can you improve on? Where do you think you, as an individual, need to do a bit of work? Start to see your failure as a lesson, things that you can learn from. And the bottom line is we never stop learning. We're only human and we should always be learning and always progressing. So if failure does come your way, think to yourself about the lessons you can learn from that failure. What can you take away from that failure? And what can you do differently next time to make things even better? Number 3, just because you have failed this once doesn't mean that you will fail again. And I'm going to give you some examples. When you learn to ride a bike without stabilizers, sometimes we fall. We carry on anyway. When you learn to drive, you can't do a reverse parallel park straight away. You can't go on a roundabout straight away, but you keep learning. When we learn anything, we always have bumps in the road. We always have blocks of time where we feel like we are staying where we are and we're not making as much growth. It could be learning a new language. It could be getting on a plane for the first time. Every single time that you think that you have failed, it doesn't mean that you'll fail again. It doesn't mean that that same failure will keep happening. And the really important thing is you need to be reframing those thoughts. So every time the failure comes, it doesn't mean it will keep coming. And this leads me into tip number 4 as well. Each time you fail, you will fail in a different way. No one fails in the same way twice if they take number 2 and they learn their lessons. So every time you fail, it will be in a different way, which means, for example, when you learn to drive, you might first of all be absolutely horrendous at changing gears, but then you might be really, really bad at going on roundabouts. But then you might be really, really bad at parking the car. But every single time you are failing in a different way. You are growing in a different way. You are learning a new lesson. And these failures then eventually stop happening and you pass your driving test. You can drive. This is exactly the same for any journey you're on, whether it's in business, a relationship, your career, going traveling, trying something new. Every single time you fail, it will be different if you learn your lesson and you keep going. So every single time this failure comes your way, don't see it as a negative. Think about the fact that this is one more way that you have moved forward and that you now are failing in a completely different way than you were before. And that's great because it means that you are still trying, you are still learning, and you are willing to keep going. That is so important. And my next tip, when failure comes your way, allow yourself to feel it. You have to allow yourself to embrace the feeling of failure, because the more time we spend running away from failure, the more time we spend trying to avoid failure, the more that when it does hit us, it knocks us for six and completely wipes us out. Let me know if that's you. So the more time you sit with that failure and you sit with that feeling and how it makes you feel, the more that you know how far away from that you want to be. It's like the really, really common phrase, the worse the times are, the more you appreciate the best of times. Going through the sadness allows you to be really grateful for the happiness. So every single time that we experience success, that success is so much sweeter if we know what that failure feels like to get there. If we know the amount of times we had to try, the lessons we had to learn, everything you had to go through to get to that success or the end of that road or that positive ending, that is so much sweeter when you appreciate the failures and when you actually sit with them and acknowledge them. And I've actually lost track, if I'm honest, if that's 5 or not. So I'm going to give you another one just in case. I get so into these. This is something that I think so many of us can really, really, really take away as a message to deal with failure, but also in general. Failing doesn't mean you're a bad person. Failing doesn't mean you're a weak person. Failure doesn't mean that you are any less worthy than anyone else. And this can be really, really hard to feel and embrace, but it's so important. Every time we fail, there's this perception that failing is really bad, or failing isn't positive, or failing means that we're not achieving in the way that we should be. But failing doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a weak person. And in no way does failure define you. Your failures do not define you. What you do with them does. So take away the lessons. Take away the fact that you are trying. Take away the fact that you can keep going. Take away the fact that you will never fail in the same way twice, which is so important. You will never fail in the same way twice. So just allow yourself to sit with those thoughts and sit with that. And remember that every time you fail, when the success comes, it's so much sweeter. So failure is not something we should fear. Failure is not something we should try and avoid. And failure is in no way bad for us. We just need to reframe our thoughts, reframe the relationship that we have with failure, and use those 5 top tips, maybe 6, and use those in your life. Actually implement them. Listen to where you are at. Take away the messages from this video. Make notes, write them down. Take the time to ask yourself about your failures and what they've taught you and how you can grow from them. And never ever forget that you are trying. Failure does not define you. What you do with it does. I really, really hope you've enjoyed this How To Tuesday, and I hope you give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, tell everyone about it, and I can't wait to see you back here on A Happy Mind TV for another How To Tuesday.